guys, and welcome to Mindfulness Monday. So this is the last week. We will study the topic and concept of death, being conscious around this topic. Death is just a continuation in the cycle of life. And when we can get that, and when we can get detached from this body and really at the fundamental cellular level understand that this body is a beautiful, amazing instrument to play in and explore and experience pleasure and joy in, and it will too rot away one day. These bones will deteriorate and the blood will stop pumping, and this little bag of bones will cease to be moving and living and breathing in the way it's doing now. And so today I want to share with you a few of the concepts that I've gotten from some of my guides and gurus or teachers on this topic that have helped either show me this topic through a different lens, or changed my gestalt, my viewpoint about this topic, or led me down a different path to explore this topic from. Because that's all guides and teachers do, is they just say, hey, have you looked about it through this lens? You never really learn anything new from anyone else. We learn through our own experiences and knowledge. And so each of these guides that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to share with you some of them through this video, and then I'm going to post a few videos this week. And the first one was, I remember when I was sitting in my first Vipassana set, Goenka was talking about this topic. And this was like the first mind-blown way of thinking about this topic, and how just attached we are to this little me, this little I, this body of mine, this thing. And he was talking about a couple that had an intimate connection the night before, and the man was saying to the woman, oh, your hair is so beautiful, I love your long silky hair, and your teeth are like pearls, and it's so beautiful when you smile, and there was a beautiful connection. And then the next morning she made him breakfast and put the plate on the table of eggs, and he pulls out this hair from the eggs, and you've all experienced that. We've all experienced that. Being in a restaurant, we're like, ooh, hair, gross, dead hair, dead hair, dead hair, that's gross, oh, and it kind of creeps you out. And she says, what, last night you were saying my hair was beautiful and flowing and silky. So what's the difference between my hair being in the food and my hair being attached to my head? The same thing with your teeth fall out, and then it's just a piece of bone, it's a chunk of bone that's gonna eventually rot and get pulverized. But when the tooth was in my mouth, it was a beautiful pearl that that helped set my smile. And so there's we have so much weight and oddities around this body of attachment to this body. And I'm going to post a Byron Katie for you. It's a great one about the topic that she was studying was I'm not beautiful. And that's another area around this topic of the body that we spend a lot of time over here in that. In prepping and preparing the hair, so our hair is beautiful and silky, and putting conditioners and lotions on our body, and makeup on our face, and beautiful shoes on our feet, and all of this area. And I love the way Byron Katie explained this. So it's like, in one manner of speaking, we put post-its all over our body of like, oh, beautiful hair, or I have my face needs to always be pretty, or washed or clean, or it's the opposite of those sticky post-its, like, oh, I have fat thighs, or I have this shoulders, and I don't. So we either have this body image that we're trying to attain to, of this beauty and this perfection, and then we have all these thoughts about what we say about our body during the day, and there's this whole world that we live in here. And think about how much energy and time we spend in that world. And I love that she was talking about the woman in that clip was in a party, and she was talking about how she felt like she was the ugly duckling in the room. And when Byron Katie got her into a state of meditation, then her mind went from being judgmental about herself to being curious about the room, to being curious about the people, to being curious about the conversations, to being curious about the connections, and just that complete shift, that change of gestalt or perspective. And then the last thing about this body that I learned that was so profound was just how to experience joy and pleasure in it. And that came from my practices of yoga and being physically in my body, and actually being able to move and fly down the the street on a longboard or on my rollerblades, feeling the wind in my hair and smelling the sounds and the sensations around me, feeling all of that, and experiencing the pleasure of ecstasy and connection with another human being. And that was what I really was able to step into that power and step into that power of pleasure, which is what we're going to be talking about next week on our practice of mindfulness. I said we're going to practice death and sex. And so stepping into that pleasure and stepping into being able to see this thing, this bag of bones, appreciating one day it will rot away and die, but also appreciating experiencing this body for what it is, for playing in this body, bringing out my spine every day and moving into this body and feeling that pleasure and that joy and that connection and the sensations that I get from just being alive in this body and appreciating what comes in through the sense doors, through this, being able to hear the sounds and the beauty of music, being able to smell the sensations of flowers and rain and the fresh air, all of those things. And that came from the practices and study of Tantra through the practice of Osho, was coming into that power through that lens. So when we spend some time unpacking this topic, we start to get away from the only time we look at death or acknowledge this body will die and rot away is when we're faced with somebody's death or when we're faced with our own mortality. And that's a fearful place to be, and not a place I want to spend time unpacking in, because I don't even understand that there's power and amazing stuff there to let's play in that place and use that and unpack that dimension to life and unpack that dimension to the process and cycle of life. And so I'm going to invite you to look at your life in every area and nook and cranny and facet of your life and see death. See, as we transition, like right now we're transitioning from fall to winter, and in winter everything kind of dies and goes dormant, but without winter, spring couldn't come. The cycle of nature doesn't cry about something dying out, because it gives way to something new that comes forward and lives. Or seeing how just in your cycle, if you're a female or you know a female, or even thinking about that cycle of every month, the female body sloughs off the dead and gets rid of the egg and the potentiality for creating life, and it sloughs that off, and we don't cry about that every month. We recognize that's the cycle of death happening within our body every single month, so that the cycle of life can continue on. Or even looking at it from another perspective of, like, when you go on a big venture or project, or you're going to go to school, or you're going to study a topic, or you're going to look at something, it's also that cycle of you go through that process and you go to school, and then eventually you get to a point where you're done with that and you've acclimated that into your body, into your life, into your base of knowledge, into your base of being, and then just like a death, you let go of that, and you're no longer spending that time and energy going to school or doing that one thing that you're doing, and you let that dissipate and you still carry on from there. One of the other beautiful ways that I do it, every time I go to a Vipassana meditation, I'm drawn to something. There's some kind of, whether it's flowers or whether it's a certain time of the year of a season, whether it's, I've studied this intensely and closely in snowflakes, in flowers, in rain, the cycle of rain, from it coming on all the way to it drying out and going away, and just watching the cycle of nature, or watching the cycle of a flower from birth to death. When you're in a field where there are thousands of flowers, you can see over that cycle of that life for that flower, and you see how delicate and how beautiful it is in every cycle. That's another thing that I don't think that we do in the West, is really appreciate every cycle and season of our life, so that when we get to our death, we can say, I have sipped it in, I have savored life. It's not the thing on the deathbed that you always hear this of, like, I didn't work hard enough, or I didn't earn enough money. No, it's that I didn't sip it in, I didn't appreciate it, I didn't stop to give myself those brief moments to relax, to enjoy, to take care of my mental health, to love myself, to do those things, to appreciate nature, to appreciate those things. So This week I'm going to invite you to appreciate the cycle of life and death all around you, anywhere you can see it, and play with it and be conscious and aware of it, because that's all the practice of mindfulness is. It's just being conscious and aware of things. Being mindful, not filled with all these thoughts, but just being mindful of our surroundings and what's going on. So thanks for joining me, you guys, on this journey. I know this was a weird and hard topic to wrap yourselves around, but I hope you stuck with it and gained some value and benefit to it. Thanks for joining me. Namaste.